You know, ever since the beginning of my YouTube channel, I always thought this was odd. Gatekeeping, right? And with my channel, there's a big focus on retro gaming, but we do touch on a lot of current generation gaming as well, kind of a little bit of everything, but my channel started with retro gaming and different ways to play, right? A big emphasis in the start was Retro Pi on the Raspberry Pi, and that was a lot of fun, and I still enjoy playing on the Raspberry Pi. And over the years, I saw in order for my YouTube channel to continue on and for me to continue having interest in what I'm doing, I need to be looking at different options, expanding my horizons, different ways to play, just not just because of the YouTube channel, but because of my interest in retro gaming. Like way back, I mean, I remember looking for different ways to play retro games, and emulation was one of the first ways that I found that was reasonable as far as price point went. Yeah, at certain points in time, you could go out, buy, retro games and places like Funko Land. I remember NES cartridges, like 99 cents. It was ridiculous. Super Nintendo games, a couple bucks. And this was just in like the early 2000s. It really seems like yesterday. Prices continually rose, but then it was like over time, it became more and more expensive. It's still an option, So I've looked at things like clone consoles, original consoles, how to set things up on HD TVs, EverDrives, flash carts, multi-carts. And you know what? It's been, man, time flies for real. It's what, 2023? How long have I been doing this YouTube channel? It's been a long time. Holy crap. And all these options that I've covered, as far as like the general options, I still enjoy. Emulation, clone consoles, original cartridges, multi-carts. I have reproductions still. It just depends on my mood, on how I want to set things up. Sometimes just all based on accessibility, like the ease of it, like quickly, hey, I just want to start gaming, right? And I've always said this, there's no right or wrong answers. There just isn't. However you play, that's your business. Whatever you do in the privacy of your own home. Even if you're playing a 4:3 aspect ratio game, stretch the hell out, 16:9, that's your business. If that's the way you prefer it, I'm not going to sit there and like tell you, no, you can't do that. But there's a lot of fools out there. Yes, a lot of fools. And I see them all the time. Ever since the beginning of my channel. You remember, I don't see it too much anymore. But it's kind of evolved into other things. But back then, maybe 8 years ago or so, 7-8 years ago, Retro Pi was huge, and it's still up there. Raspberry Pi playing emulation, great option. But you would always see people, if you talked about a different option, just get a Retro Pi. And that drove me nuts because I was doing a lot of Retro Pi content, and then I was touching on other things that interested me. Not the end of the world. Like, I'm not like pissed off and going crazy nonstop thinking about this, but recently I've been seeing this a lot again. And it's kind of ridiculous. There'll be certain things that I cover. Maybe I'll talk about a news story, a new upcoming option, different things. And now the big one is no matter what you talk about, people are like, just get a Mister. And you know what? The Mister is freaking fabulous. I'm not denying that. I've like heavily covered Mister in the past. It's an option. That's all it is. Is it a better option than something else? No, it's not. You have a lot of people, and I've said FPGA gaming is the future as far as like the preservation of gaming in a sense, to keep it moving forward as people being interested in development and continuing coming up with new ways to play. For sure, that still holds true, but it's not a better option than any other option. Every option that exists to play your retro games, there's pros and cons to. I hate to break it to you. Like, that's just the way it goes. FPGA, a lot of people, okay, it's not software emulation, it's hardware simulation. Essentially, it's emulation. You're emulating something that it's not. So, I mean, people will argue this stuff all day long, and I think it's ridiculous. Like, nobody cares because, that stuff's not perfect either. Like, it's not the original console. There's going to be quirks, maybe certain things, some of these consoles that have come out, the analog, consoles, they've maybe not continually, but they've had to update these cores. The FPGA cores for Open FPGA on the Analog Pocket, they've had to get updates. Mister, they've had to get updates. Not like day one, an FPGA core comes out and it's perfect representation of what the original hardware is. It's not the case. It's just not. It's another option. And, you know, how long emulation's been around, I could sit here and play, you know, lots of games that I'm very sensitive to certain things on, like Super Mario Brothers on the NES or Super Mario All-Stars version on the Super Nintendo, when, you know, which there is differences with the way those games feel between the two. But I'm very sensitive to certain things. If it doesn't feel right, and I have played on certain devices, maybe there's something wrong with the way it's set up or something where it just doesn't feel right. But emulation has advanced so much that, I mean, I'll play a game through emulation that I'm really sensitive to. Like I just said, I have zero issues playing through a game like Super Mario 1 with, you know, a single life, play through the entire game, and it feels like I'm playing on the original hardware, other than the looks of it, because I'm not on a CRT TV. That's the other thing too. Like I always hear people like, man, you have to be on a CRT. There's no other way. That's what the retro games were meant for. And while that may be true, initially when they came out, that's what they were designed to play on, was CRTs, but that's not feasible for a lot of people nowadays. But it's an option. I have a CRT sitting right over there, and I use it all the time to watch VHS tapes, to play NES on. It's an option. I have a bunch of options because I've been able to have these options as partly as a business expense for my YouTube channel. And I don't ever claim that any of these are better options. FPGA console, like from Analog, Mister FPGA, a cheap emulation solution like Raspberry Pi on a Pi 3 or Pi 4, or, you know, maybe the upcoming Pi 5, which is coming out like a week, I think. Or even a cheap Android box that's even cheaper than a Raspberry Pi, or on a higher end PC. Like, yeah, with emulation, it's really going to depend on the power behind your system, on, you know, how far you can push those capabilities. But everybody's going to have a different preference, and it may be for different reasons. The ease of use, the accessibility, the cost. Like, there's going to be people out there who are, their preference is the original cartridges, the original hardware, and that's it. No flash carts, no emulation, no reproductions, no bootlegs, nothing. And that's great. That's awesome. There's going to be people who are like, I just like FPGA gaming, and hey, that's great. Or they like FPGA gaming on clone hardware, like stuff from Analog. Or, hey, maybe even the Polymega. I don't know. Emulation any which way, you know, you want to play, or maybe just playing on the Nintendo Switch some old school video games. It's just whatever people desire, as long as they're happy. If they could play that way, it's no big deal. But I see it all the time now. Just get a Mister FPGA on everything. Like, it could be cost prohibitive to some. I think it's great and fine to make people aware of options out there. That's what I do. But to push your preference as this is the only answer, like I've seen on videos where I talk about original hardware, where it's like, just get a, you know, emulation device, just get this. But sometimes there's people who their preferences, you know, cartridges. Maybe they have cartridges. People have been buying the Analog Pocket because they have Game Boy cartridges, right? Well, just get something else. Well, does this other option that you're telling them that they need to have instead of the option that they want, does that option actually fulfill the reason that they want this other option? Does that option that you're telling them they have to have, just get it, does it play their cartridges? I mean, think about it. People are nuts, man. It's just like, leave people alone, man. Like, I cover options. A lot of people like different options. And like I said, there's different reasons for, you know, everybody to have a different preference. Just the freaking way it is, dude. But there's my little rant and ramble for the day. I don't know. Play the way you want. It doesn't freaking matter. As long as you're having fun. We're not curing, like, diseases here. We're playing games to pass the time. To escape from this treacherous world. You know what I mean? At least for a moment. So who gives a shit? Calm down. Bye.